So hey everybody, welcome back to Bow and Arrow Garage. So I am installing the valley cover on this LS-1 engine. And what does that mean? That means that the engine and the transmission are in the car for good. So anyways, I'm going to get this thing installed and then I'm going to walk you through the process of what I had to do to get this engine and transmission in this car. It actually went in pretty easy, but as they say, the devil's in the details, and hooking up everything, that was a real pain in the backside. So anyways, I'm going to get this thing torqued down and then we'll jump right into the video and we'll show you what we had to do to get this engine and transmission in this car. All right guys, I actually got her in, so that's a beautiful thing. I'm going to get the motor mount bolts, throw them in, and then I'll have to work on the transmission mount later on. All right guys, I got the engine finally bolted in on the motor mounts. The engine and transmission went in great. I mean, it fell right in. It looks like it was made for this car. I'm really happy just looking at everything. I actually have a little more clearance than I did with the small block on the firewall, which is pretty surprising to me. The oil pan has plenty of clearance in case I ever have to pull the oil pan. But I had a major issue with the motor mounts. And I had purchased new motor mounts, I believe, from either O'Reilly's or AutoZone, I don't remember which. But the bolt, the center bolt would not go in. I mean, it absolutely would not go in. I was trying to use a bullet to get this one to go in, and this little piece broke off here. So I pulled them out and I started looking. This dimension is much wider than the original ones. Not only that, but the dimension from here to here which is what was causing my issue, is about 3/8 of an inch off. And so you add that up on both sides, and now you're looking at a big issue. So it took me forever. It took me several hours because I worked, first of all, multiple hours trying to get the bolts to go in. And I fought it and fought it and fought it, and finally that sheared off, and I was like, well, that's it. But it was kind of late yesterday. And so I ended up having to, I was going to go buy new ones, but I was like, I looked at my old ones and they were dirty and greasy, but all in all, they were in decent shape. So I cleaned them up, and I ended up, even on these, I had to modify it. In the video where I did the motor mounts, I had to mill this down a little bit so that the mounts would sit flush on the swap plates. And so I had to do that to the old mounts, get it cleaned up, and so finally I got it installed. All in all, I'm very happy with the way the engine went in. I don't have my transmission mount in yet. That's going to be my next order of business here. So I'm going to get under the car and try to get the transmission mount installed. Anyways, I'm going to get in there and get my shifter reinstalled. The shifter is in pretty perfect position. Obviously it's kicked off to the right side, but it's going to line up just right with the cutout, and that's what I was wanting. So that's why I went with the TKX 5-speed. So anyways, I'll get the transmission mount in and get the shift tower back on, and that'll be it for the engine and transmission install, at least as far as getting it in the car. So hey folks, I have been under this car all day, but I think I finally got the engine and transmission mounted correctly. I have one thing left to do, and that is to install the shift tower. There is absolutely no way you're going to get this transmission past the cross member with that shift tower in there. So it had to come off. Luckily, it's pretty easy to do. But I have a feeling, just because of the limited space I have now, it's going to be a real pain in the backside to get it back in. And then once I get that, I'm going to tighten my final mount bolts on the transmission. But everything else is installed. Everything lined up perfect. I mean, I fought this thing for hours last night trying to get the engine mount bolts in, and literally when I put the old ones back in, they slipped right in. All right, I'm going back in with the shift tower. So I'm going to go ahead and slide it into place. I'm going to have to probably go underneath and make sure that everything, in fact, there's no doubt about it. So I don't know how good that's coming out on camera, but basically you have a lever that gets sandwiched in here, and so it's got a clamp block on it with a couple of Allen keys. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and there's an alignment on it. You basically line up the split with the split and the clamp block, and then I'll go ahead and get the Allen keys that hold the tower down from the top started, and then we'll go from there. All right folks, I finally got the shift tower back installed, and it took forever. So there's a couple of tricks. First of all, when you put the shift tower on, you want to make sure, put it in place and then torque it down. And then you have to get a second person in to kind of move the shift lever to get the little composite ball lined up so you can put the clamp block on it. And so anyways, that took a little while, but really what took forever was putting the dust shield back on. There's 2 screws, and they were a nightmare. I'll show you what I ended up using. I ended up using a long extension with a swivel socket, but this is not just your ordinary swivel socket. This is the high dollar set from Snap-on, where it's got the universal built into the socket, and so you can get up there and get the screw started. And I dropped that thing 100 times and had to go fish it out with a magnet. But anyways, finally got it. I've got one more thing to do on the transmission, and that's to go in and actually torque, or tighten I should say, the bolts that go up into the transmission from the mount. So you have the 2 mount bolts from the bottom, but then you have the 2 bolts that hook the mount to the transmission. So I've got to get that tightened up, down, and then that will be it for now. I've got to order a couple of other things. I've got to order my drive shaft and and just the fluids and everything else for the transmission. But that's going to be it. I'm going to go ahead and torque those 2 bolts down, and then that's going to be it for the night. All right, everybody, the LS and the Tremec TKX 5-speed are in the car for good. They're not coming out again, obviously, unless we have a major issue. But I'm not going to lie, it kicked my tail. The engine and transmission went in fantastic, but I had the issue with the engine mounts. And then the transmission, it was just very difficult to get everything in. That little dust cover kicked my tail. So anyways, it's going to be a while before this thing runs still, but this is a major accomplishment. And so I'm excited, really, really happy with the progress we've made. And obviously we've got a long way to go, but we can't get there without getting this step done. So hey everybody, that's pretty much going to do it for this video. As you can see, it's kind of laid out. It's pretty dark behind me. And this whole process was a very tedious process. I videoed a lot of footage of me initially putting the engine and transmission in the car, but I didn't want to bore you to death with you just watching me drop the engine and just a little bit by a little bit, going under the car, making sure I wasn't hitting anything, coming back outside, making sure we were clear out here, moving the engine in a little bit more, dropping it down, and then repeating the process over and over again. So that footage, I try to minimize a little bit, like I said, just to not bore you to death. But then the other stuff that I did under the car, it was really, really difficult to get any footage at all, because it was really, really difficult to get the shift tower back on and get the clamp block back on, and hold the little Allen keys as I was trying to get everything lined up. And then really the dust cover was just terrible, trying to hold that thing in place and get those screws started. And so it was kind of just this thing that, I mean, this whole process, if you watch the videos, you will kind of see a recurring theme of me saying that this thing kicked my butt, because it was really, really kind of, like I said, a tedious thing. It was very difficult to get some of the screws in. And, you know, it's one of those things that when you do a project like this, you just run into things like that. And I wanted to say that I realized that kind of this thing can seem to be getting long in the tooth as far as the engine swap, but I wanted to kind of chronicle some of the more difficult issues that you run into, or not really even difficult, but just the issues that you run into when you do a swap like this. I see a lot of people kind of gloss over all these different things, and they'll start an LS swap and they'll show the engine and transmission, they'll do a couple things, and then before you know it, the engine is in the car and it's running. And so, like I said, I wanted to kind of break it down step by step and show you what you're going to get into if you end up deciding to do one of these projects. To me, working on these things is fun, and working out these little issues is really enjoyable to do. But even now, trying to put the starter on, I ran into an issue the other day with the starter bolts. I wanted to go with the starter that has the equal length bolts instead of the one that has the one long bolt and the one short bolt. If you look online, you'll see a lot of times that short ear will break off, and it'll actually basically break your engine block. And so trying to work on that, I ran into all these different issues. But these are the kind of things you run into. So anyways, in these projects, you just kind of have to keep your head up and keep moving forward. And that's why you see a lot of people with barn finds and things like that, because people start these projects and then they realize how much work it takes. But that's one of those things, if people know me, they'll tell you that once I start something, I usually see it through to the end. So anyways, I just wanted to say thank you for watching the videos. I hope you enjoy this process as much as I do. Like I said, I know it can get kind of get long in the tooth sometimes, but stick with me. We're going to get this thing running, and it's going to be sooner than you might think. So anyways, thank you. Have a great night, and we hope to see you next time.